Major news on two fronts today. In the nomination of Neil Gorsuch to the U.S. Supreme Court, the Senate Judiciary Committee today, they voted to advance the nomination to the full Senate. Final vote, 11-9, with not a single Republican voting no or a single Democrat voting yes. Also today, word that a Democratic filibuster on Gorsuch's nomination is almost assured. There are now enough Democrats willing to block a final vote on the nomination that it cannot pass under current Senate rules. Most observers now expect Senate Republicans to rewrite Senate rules and employ the so-called nuclear option, so Gorsuch could be confirmed by a simple majority vote and not the 60 votes needed to break that filibuster. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he explained his rationale on Meet the Press yesterday.
If the shoe had been on the other foot, they wouldn't have filled a Republican president's vacancy in the middle of a Supreme Court, in the middle of a presidential election. So that clearly wasn't going to happen.
Now, polling on the Gorsuch nomination would seem to side with the Republicans. A majority of people asked by NBC said Gorsuch should get an up or down vote. And in a CBS News poll, more Americans said Gorsuch should be confirmed than should not, though the majority did say they don't know enough to form an opinion. Now, these numbers, by the way, consistent with polls from the last 4 Supreme Court nominees to actually receive hearings and a vote. All right, let's bring our panel in right now. Jeanne Zaino, she's a professor of political science at Iona College and also senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Techonomics. Dominic Carter, fresh from vacations back, journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. We've gone around and around on this one. I'm definitely in the minority. I know that Democrats say they're going to vote no, with a couple of exceptions, but more than 40 of them are, because A, they'll get killed in a primary if they don't, and the president's made it impossible to be seen to do this. Plus, they remember the specter of Merrick Garland. Do you think the Democrats forcing the Republicans' hand on the nuclear option now, rather than potentially down the road, is smart, or will they regret it?
I think they're going to regret it. I am firmly opposed, and I'm in the minority on this. I am firmly opposed to this. I don't think you go up for a battle that you know you're going to lose, especially when you know you're going to lose the war. Because what's going to happen is he's going to get on the Supreme Court, no question. They're going to take the nuclear option, and for the next major vacancy, which is likely to be either Kennedy, Ginsburg, or Breyer, the 3 oldest members of the court, those are real vacancies that matter. He's filling Scalia's seat. That changes nothing about the outcome of these cases.
You know the argument. They're going to do it anyway.
Andrew.
They're going to do it anyway. That's what the argument is. Whether they do it now or they'll do it later, doesn't matter who they are, even if it's for a moderate or even a progressive justice. There's no guarantee, certainly with this president, that he wouldn't pick somebody very conservative to fill that seat. And as a consequence, if they have the same makeup then, they'd still apply the nuclear option.
But absolutely, he's gonna absolutely choose a conservative, and that's why you don't do this now. You do it when it actually matters. This doesn't matter because it doesn't change the outcome of cases unless Neil Gorsuch surprises people and turns out to be a moderate or liberal, which sometimes happens. He's going to vote the conservative line most of the time, very much in the same way that Scalia did. You're changing nothing. It really matters if they fill Kennedy's seat or Ginsburg's seat or Breyer's seat with a conservative. Then you change the outcome. You're shooting yourself in the foot for absolutely no reason.
First of all,
he's chomping at the bit.
First of all, I object to the question. In no way are the Democrats forcing Republicans' hands on this. Republicans are employing the nuclear option entirely on their own because they would face a filibuster from the Democrats.
Oh,
there is no forcing involved here whatsoever. This is a Republican choice.
Do you remember when it came to Ginsburg? When it came to Kagan, do you remember what the overall votes were for their confirmation?
They were pretty lopsided, 90 plus.
96 and 95 respectively, okay? My point is, we can go back and debate the genesis and have a really interesting philosophical question when this all started, but the point is, the rules have somewhat changed. And if you were a Republican tonight, wouldn't you say, time out, the guy's competent, he's qualified, he certainly has the resume, why shouldn't if he checks all those boxes?
Because
why
he doesn't
shouldn't
have 60 votes and he can't get past the filibuster. Again, in no way are Democrats forcing this nuclear option. Republicans are making this decision. Democrats for the last week have been saying, if you can't get to 60 votes, the problem isn't the threshold, the problem is the nominee.
Do you really think that's the case, or do you think it's Merrick Garland?
I think Gorsuch did himself a huge disservice with Senate Democrats by obfuscating his answers, refusing to answer with any
specific.
No, not to the same extent. And you and I have done some of the same reading on this. You know that Gorsuch was particularly slippery in his confirmation hearings in a way that we haven't seen before.
No,
As for your point,
can't let you get away with that one.
I'm still
There's been yeah. Well, listen, that has absolutely been the case since the Bork nomination. I teach the Supreme Court. We just listened to every oral hearing in class. Ginsburg started that. Nobody in their right mind would go in and be honest about how they're going to decide cases because you'd never get through. And by the way, it doesn't matter.
Which are previous cases, not future cases. He didn't answer anything on those either.
Nobody does.
All he said is these are precedents.
I agree with you. It's not in the best interest of the American public. But you can't hold Gorsuch to one thing and then let Kagan and Sotomayor and Ginsburg and everybody else get away.
In his
he did not go any further. He did not go any further.
That's not why they're going to be voting no. Even if either one of them's right, they're still going to vote no. Do you think it's because they're afraid of the primary? Do you think it's because, meaning if they do vote yes for this guy and you're not like Manchin in a really a red state or certainly a purple state, it's easy to give him political cover. Are Democrats more worried about their base, or are they saying, my God, I might have voted yes for this guy if his eventual boss here, or at least the president, wasn't such a lunatic for the last 70 days, and anything he touches is toxic? Is it more because of Trump, or is it more because of what happened to Merrick Garland?
Well, it's a little bit, in my opinion, of all what you mentioned. It starts with the fact that they don't want to, Democrats we're talking about right now, they don't want Richard to offend their base. And I don't understand the logic on this one. Sorry, Mr. Whitman. I agree with the professor, and I believe you have this sentiment. Let me just try this a different way. The Republicans, Andrew's getting ready for battle. The Republicans have no choice, Richard. This president cannot take another major defeat. That's the bottom line. So whether it means that they don't have the votes and they must go nuclear, whatever it may be, they must. Mr. Trump, for all of his, you mentioned I just got back. One thing I found interesting, traveling, Richard, and I'm not talking about African Americans now. I'm talking about mainstream whites. Do you know what America is saying about this president? It's not good.
I've seen the polls.
It's not, and those polls I found out this weekend are reflective of what's. I had whites when there was a picture of the president up saying, "What is that picture doing here? Put that picture down." Whites, his base in the state of Georgia. I believe, Professor, he won Georgia.
Yes, he did.
And so they're not happy with him. So part of this is to do with Trump, and part of this is because this president cannot take another defeat right now.
Well, let me color this in political optics, Andrew, and tell me where you disagree. We all have heard, they've done their internal numbers, they've gone through, the calls are getting to their offices. Politically, they believe it's a safer move to say no here. Forget that he was evasive on the answers, forget Merrick Garland or whatever else. The base just does not want any cooperation with this president, given how he's conducted himself and what's happened the last 70 days with the Spectre investigation, blah, 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 blah. But if they, first off, they do the same exact thing if Obama was president and they had a slight majority in the Senate and they wouldn't vote Garland to confirm him, they would have done the nuclear option.
Because they didn't give him hearings.
I know that, and that's outrageous, and we all thought that was wrong. But at the end of the day, I just think if you're just going off of bad news, they've owned the bad news calendar, have Republicans. All you're going to do is make an opportunity for more than one news cycle to change around the Democrats were bitter and small. Because nobody thinks Gorsuch isn't qualified.
Find me the voter who's not going to vote a particular way because of Neil Gorsuch. Find me the voter who's going to say, you know what, Democrats are being obstructionist here. I was going to vote for my Democratic member or Democratic candidate for Senate. Now I'm voting Republican because they just weren't fair with this whole process.
I'll tell you where this applies. Let's say the Russia investigation all of a sudden reveals things that we're not, at this point, privy to, and it's damning. The president's going to play into his narrative of see how partisan the Democrats are here. Look what they did to Neil Gorsuch in the rest.
He's going to do that anyway. He's been doing it since the election, still saying that all of his bad news is because of sour grapes from the election. So why are you making a concession to somebody who's going to do the same thing after you concede, before you do before they concede? There is no downside to the Democrats for doing this. And the last point that well, I was going to make, but then Jeanne interrupted and I've lost my train.
See, I did that right.
Well played.
Can I just say that from the Democratic perspective, here is my problem. I think this is incredibly short-sighted if you really care about the issues on the Democrats' part. If you really care about the issues that you want the court to protect, this doesn't make sense to me strategically. It's a short-term win. And I agree with you. People don't vote on the Supreme Court. They don't even know who these people are. It's a short-term news cycle win, and you suffer huge defeats long-term potentially.
More conservative jurists later on the court who you might not have otherwise had.
Because you wind up being unable to fight when it matters. It doesn't matter when you're filling a conservative seat.
Right now.
It matters
right now. And I'm sorry, but if
how does Neil Gorsuch change the numbers on the court, Andrew?
If the next seat,
it doesn't.
Because this is the seat that's open right now, and if the next seat is Ginsburg's, if the next seat is Ginsburg's, or if it's Kennedy's, or if it's anybody else's seat,
have you helped yourself?
Do you really think Trump's going to nominate a moderate for any of those seats? Do you think he's going to nominate a liberal for any of those seats?
You're not understanding.
You're going to get the same result no matter what you do, so you may as well make your stand now.
No, you're not. Can I just tell you, it matters. He's filling a conservative seat. He's a conservative, so we think. It doesn't change the math. Let me finish on the court. When it changes the math is when he fills a liberal or swing seat. That's when they need to fight.
They're going to do it anyway.
But if it's
Ginsburg, you're going to lose that fight in 2 years the same way you're going to lose the fight right now.
There's an inevitability to both your maths.
Right.
Like, I agree with that. It's just the optics we're debating.
The Democrats are going to lose. The Democrats are going to lose no matter how you slice this, whether it's now, whether it's the next seat, whether it's the swing seat. They don't have the numbers.
So what are you holding your powder back
I'll tell you,
for,
this is the only reason. First off, the new number is 51. Whether it's done this week or if there's another opening, 51 is the new number. And for anyone to pretend otherwise, like the nuclear option won't be invoked after we've already broken the seal on it, we're kidding ourselves. Here's the only argument I'll make for you. And maybe politically among primary voters, it's a dangerous one. I can probably count on 5 senators on the Republican side that are not party line votes across the board. And if you say to them, it's a bit of a reach what I'm saying, we're going to give you Neil Gorsuch. He's Scalia. We'll pretend like Merrick Garland never happened. We'll give you the vote. Not 90-something or whatever. Give people who want to vote no, but give them 60 votes. But if a liberal or a moderate comes up and they put up somebody not only that's going to be right-wing, right of Attila the Hun, not only will we as a bloc vote no, but I expect some of you will make sure that if you have to vote no, just to make sure that the nuclear option isn't employed on this one, we will. Because no U.S. senator thinks the nuclear option is good for that body.
So where are the profiles encouraged to make that deal now?
Well, you'd have to have Democrats to say. To me,
I'm sure it's been considered. I'm sure there have been conversations, but there's nobody willing to stand up and make that stand.
Because the Democrats would also have to swallow hard, and 10 of them would have to say, "I'm going to vote for Gorsuch."
If that was
right
going
now,
to
we don't
happen,
see those
it would
numbers.
be happening now. Otherwise, you're banking this all on a hope and a prayer that the next
Andrew,
nominee is somehow better.
But Andrew, and I think this is a point that Richard made, and I think this is what the professor is alluding to. If the Democrats step in right now, the narrative around the country is an incompetent administration and a president that fires from the hip and doesn't know what he's doing. If the Democrats put up the fight right now, your term was what, sour grapes? What was it? So why would the Democrats, why would they want to get in the way of an administration that is literally destroying
Since they can't
itself
stop
right
it
now?
anyway.
You remember those kids'
Right,
little things with the pens that you would write on a little thing, and then you would rip the paper up and it would clear and you could write something else all there? In this metaphor, no, it was actually the little sheet thing. But in this example, this metaphor is Donald Trump. The Democrats can do something that changes the narrative, makes them the bad guy, and 5 minutes later, Trump's going to step in something again that changes the narrative back to the administration.
I have no polling to back up what I'm saying, but I'm getting the sense that after the fever of the last year and what we've seen the first 70 some odd days so far, there is a portion of this population that's not in their two different corners that wants grown-ups to come to the table. I think that there's a fatigue already and a concern, frankly, that people are like, all right, I might have voted for this guy, but I didn't sign up for this. And they're looking for somebody, anybody, to be the adult at the table. I'm not so sure, even on the principles, even on the politics, and even on all the things you fairly laid out, that they won't be viewed as infantile, voting no just because he wasn't their guy. Anyway, well, we're going to find out. I bet you're right. I bet you they're going to vote and force them to do the nuclear option. The Republicans will do it, and I think Neil Gorsuch will fill that vacant chair. But we're going to find out theoretically this Friday.